A man wakes in horror, realizing his spaceship won't reach its destination for 90 years, and everyone else is still in stasis. He's the only one accidentally awake. Desperate to avoid dying of old age, he tries to re-enter stasis. After hours of waiting, nothing happens, and the oxygen starts rapidly depleting. Panicking, he attempts to open the pod, but it won't budge. Just as he's about to suffocate, the pod suddenly opens, saving him. Jim rushes to send a distress signal, but learns it'll take 19 years to reach Earth, with a reply coming 55 years later at best. Unwilling to wait, Jim heads to the bridge to seek the captain's help. Bridge access requires special authorization. He lacks clearance and the crew inside remains in stasis. Realizing only they can help, Jim finds a hammer and frantically attacks the door. He tries welding too, but the door is impenetrable, not even leaving a scratch. Jim exhausts all options but can't breach the iron barrier. Passing a bar in despair, he spots someone. Excited, Jim greets him, but the man just asks for his drink order. Jim realizes it's a robot bartender. Hopeless, he decides to enjoy his remaining time. He breaks into the presidential suite, indulging in luxuries and entertainment, then feasts at the high-end restaurant. After a year, the man has become a wild and emotionally unstable creature. Prolonged loneliness drove the man to drunken dreams daily, wondering why he alone was awake while others slept. He angrily tossed his bottle aside, lamenting the unfairness of fate. Just then, Jim noticed a space in the front hatch. Curious, he entered and found 2 spacesuits. Following the AI's guidance, he donned one, pressed a red switch, and the hatch opened. He walked to the ship's edge, gazing at the vast, deep universe. Jim secured his safety line, leapt from the ship, and soared freely through space. But soon, he couldn't help shedding a tear. After his spacewalk, Jim realized he'd spent his life alone on this ship. He considered suicide, entering the airlock unsuited. One press of the red button would end his misery. After hesitating, Jim fled in panic, his fear of death overcoming his inner turmoil. As he stumbled and rose, he noticed a beautiful woman in a sleep pod. One glance, and Jim was captivated by her beauty. In the following days, Jim obsessively viewed the woman's files and videos, making it his sole reason for living. Reading about the sleep pods, Jim had a terrible idea and consulted his only friend. Facing the emotionless robot, Jim made his decision. He trimmed his beard, dressed up, and approached the woman's pod with his toolbox. He activated the controller, inserted a chip, then damaged the sleep pod with an electric rod. The sleeping girl in the pod had just slammed the bell and was about to wake up when the man, looking as if he'd done something wrong, quickly packed up the toolbox, inserted a chip into it, and then damaged the sleeping pod with an electric rod. The man quickly packed up the toolbox, inserted a chip into it, and then damaged the sleeping pod with an electric rod, just as the sleeping girl in the pod slammed the bell. Jim told her, once someone is woken from sleep, they can't go back to sleep. Lola thought there must be another way and found the control room of the spaceship, but it was blocked by a firewall. Jim had tried everything and still couldn't open the iron door, but Lola refused to give up and frantically smashed at it with a hammer. Lola instantly collapsed when she saw that all the crew members of the spaceship were sleeping inside. She couldn't even find the captain to help after a long, difficult day. Feeling guilty, Jim found the robot Jubao and confessed about waking Lola. Although Lola could alleviate her loneliness, it was no different from killing her. Jim pleaded with Jubao to keep this a secret and never let Lola find out. Jubao quickly agreed, seemingly unaware that one day, Lola would learn the truth from him. Lola, who had not slept long, woke from a nightmare and approached the central hall to ask the AI if there was any other way to enter into hibernation. But the answer she got was tragically disappointing. Having not eaten all day, Lola went to the cafeteria and ordered a golden breakfast. But then she turned around and saw he wore a dashing spacesuit. The captain handed Jim his access card. Fixing the ship was up to them now. With that, he closed his eyes forever. Before they could act, the ship shook violently. they rushed to engineering to find the problem. Luckily, they soon found a jammed door. The issue likely originated there. As Jim cracked the door's chip, Laura was sucked inside by a strong force. Jim blocked the hatch, kicked in a tablet, and sprayed sealant to close the hole. Inside, they discovered numerous large holes in the wall. 2 years ago, the ship damaged its cooling system in an asteroid field. Problems grew as heat built up. Jim found spare reactor parts and replaced the damaged ones, but when he tried to vent the hot gas, he found the exhaust valve blocked. Seeing imminent explosion, Jim donned his suit, grabbed a shield, and went out. When Laura returned, the central room was scorching. Even the exhaust rod was burning hot. Laura removed her clothes to use them. A shard struck her, but she bandaged the wound. Jim needed to open the valve. The switch required constant pressure to stay open. To save 5,000 lives, Jim chose to stay and hold the switch. Laura reluctantly pulled the lever. Hot gas rushed at Jim. Despite his shield, he was blown into space, his tether snapping. What's worse, Jim's spacesuit has a hole and oxygen is rapidly leaking out. When Lola found out, she quickly put on a spacesuit and upon seeing Jim, hurriedly flew over. But just as she was about to grab him, the tether ran out of length, separating them again. Luckily, at the critical moment, Jim's tether appeared before Lola. She precisely grabbed it and pulled him back in. Though Jim was rescued, prolonged oxygen deprivation left him motionless. Lola rushed him to the medical pod for a full body scan. The distraught Lola worked frantically, selecting every emergency treatment the medical pod offered. After intensive care, Jim recently recovered and resumed his duties. This life-or-death trial reignited their romance. Days later, Jim discovered the medical pod could put people into hibernation. He shared this exciting news with Lola, urging her to use it. But Lola, now deeply in love with Jim, wanted to spend her remaining years on the ship together with him. 90 years later, the awakened crew was amazed to find the central hall filled with plants and touched by the couple's enduring love story. Jim's breakfast was just a slice of bread. He'd taken a loan for this spaceship trip, missing out on gold member perks. Learning Jim had eaten like this for over a year, Laura promptly ordered him a luxurious breakfast. Such a kind, beautiful girl. One wonders how she'll treat Jim once she learns the truth. Days later, Laura accepted reality. She approached Jim, asking why he left Earth for a new home. A 120-year space journey, never to see his family again. Jim, an engineer, said on Earth, people replace broken things instead of fixing them. But on the colony, he can use his skills and start anew. As Laura got to know Jim, she grew fond of him. They chatted over coffee, facing aging on the ship. Seeing Laura's sadness, Jim took her to the entertainment facility for some fun. Laura's mood lifted, and she became quite cheerful. Sensing the right moment, Jim modified a cleaning robot and drove it to Laura, offering a date note. Seeing the robot's eager nod, Laura couldn't refuse. Jim, dressed in a dapper suit, felt incredibly nervous on their first date. Seeing Laura's elegant appearance, Jim was instantly smitten, glad he'd made the right choice. They went to a bar, had whiskey, and enjoyed a romantic candlelit dinner. To win Laura over, Jim took her to experience the space project. In spacesuits, they walked to the ship's edge, marveling at the dazzling stars. Hand in hand, they soared through space. The moment couldn't be more romantic. After their thrilling date, their attraction was fully ignited. From then on, they embraced an unplanned life, applauding love wherever they went. A year later, on Lola's birthday, they celebrated, had drinks, and Jubao rejoiced in their success. Jim went to the bathroom ready to propose, unaware Jubao had revealed his secret. When Jim returned, Lola immediately questioned him. Jim's admission devastated Lola, even more than when she first woke up. He retreated to his room, unaware of the storm about to hit. That night, Lola burst in, attacking Jim, but her anger remained unquenched. Lola raised a hammer, but Jim spread his arms, accepting his fate. Lola couldn't follow through, realizing it was pointless, and left in anger. Jim, acknowledging his mistake, begged Lola's forgiveness over the radio. They became strangers, unaware the ship was critically malfunctioning, nearing its doom. Jim felt the elevator jolt and suddenly stop, trapping him inside. He tried to escape, but as it restarted, he nearly injured himself. Meanwhile, Lola's luxurious breakfast unexpectedly turned into a pile of soybeans. Just then, a voice from the central hall revealed the captain had awakened. Seeing the passengers awake, he rushed to check the ship, finding crucial data missing. At this point, he had to manually check what was wrong. He decided to start with the hibernation pods. The captain inspected the two-person pod and found the issue. Jim's pod malfunctioned due to a burned chip waking him. But Lola's pod was deliberately damaged. Jim admitted he did it. Now wasn't the time to blame Jim. Fixing the ship was urgent. But Lola was upset, feeling Jim had stolen his life, essentially attempted murder. As they talked, Jim brought in the 16th malfunctioning robot vacuum. The captain kept coughing. Lola, seeing he'd just woken up, suggested rest, but back in his room, the captain coughed up blood. Meanwhile, Lola was swimming when the pool suddenly lost gravity. Struggling for air, waves kept pushing him back down. Lola fought the water, then stopped moving from lack of oxygen. Luckily, the ship's gravity returned to normal. Lola floated up, narrowly escaping suffocation. Realizing the danger, they woke the captain. He knew gravity issues meant serious ship problems. They had to act fast to survive. The captain rushed to engineering to check faults. Suddenly, he collapsed. They carried him to medical for a scan, shocked by the results. The pod malfunction caused organ failure. The captain had hours to live. Learning this, he left to be alone, facing his imminent death. More ship malfunctions occurred, red lights flashing everywhere. When they met again, the ship's hatch was broken. It was their final moment.